Welcome everybody to the morning update show. Grand Rising to all of you. Happy Wednesday to you. I am your co host, Trey Holiday. And you guys know that my co host and bestie, Big O, is holding it down for his family right now. But we are so excited to have him joining us digitally. Let's bring in my co host, Big O.
Hey, what's up? Good morning, Shreyanna. How are you? Good to see you.
Yes, great to see you as well, my friend. How you doing out there?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. And it's real timely today that you're wearing our pink breast cancer awareness Converge t-shirt today. A lot of people might, especially people who haven't tuned in a while, they're used to seeing me there in the studio next to you. I'm actually down here in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I've been here for a minute. And my stepmom, my bonus mom, Paulette, she had her breast cancer surgery today. And the good news is a lot of people have been following this story for a while. The good news is she just got out of surgery about an hour and a half ago and she's recovering well. And so I want to say thank you. And I appreciate all the prayers of our viewers out there and all these great messages that you've been sending to the family and everything else. It's, man, yeah, it's been a trip. So
Well, it's a beautiful thing. And of course, I had to be, coming in on the right day, making sure that I am supporting and sending so much love to Mama Paulette out there. All the love from me right here in the studio.
right. And for people who don't know, we still have a few of those special edition breast cancer awareness shirts available. And a portion of the proceeds goes to Sierra Sisters there in Seattle, Washington. Sierra Sisters helps women who are going through breast cancer and breast cancer surgery and offers support for them. So those are available where we converge/shop. Real kind of big and heavy show today. We've got Colleen Echo Hawk. And last time we had Colleen Echo Hawk here, I think we were talking, it was Native American Awareness Month, and we were having a discussion there talking about the Chief Seattle Club. Well, it's been big news since then. Now she's running for mayor of our dear Emerald City. So we're going to be talking to her. And then also, we're talking about this issue around suicide for a good part of this week. And in the second part of the show here, we're going to go over the interview that I did with Alyssa Shaw from the King County Prosecutor's Office. And she works, excuse me, everybody. She works in a department called, she works with the Extreme Risk Protection Order. And we're going to talk about what an Extreme Risk Protection Order is and how that kind of plays into suicide prevention, everything else. Before we get to Colleen Echo Hawk, though, last night was the CPC Town Hall. I don't know. Did you catch any of that town hall, Trey?
Just a little. So, I was also in meetings. So I was trying to have it in the background so I could hear what was going on.
It was interesting. I mean, one thing I'll say is this, though. It's good to see that many people engaged. The viewership of it was really high. There's a lot of people definitely wanting to know what's going on. You had the Seattle Police Department that was there last night. Then you also had different organizations: Seattle Group for Police Accountability, Black Action Coalition, Colorful Communities. Nikita Oliver was there, the CPC. There were also some high-ranking officials from the Seattle Police Department was there last night as well, where you had Becca Boatwright, who's big time there in their legal and policy, and then you had a few deputy chiefs there as well. So people can find the CPC and what we talked about or what they talked about there on the town hall. It's across all of our platforms, about 2.5 hours, and it's well worth kind of viewing. I think at the end of the day, even though the discussions about policy, there just seems to still be um, a lot of issues and angst and passion and emotion that a lot of people in communities still have before they can drill down on actually policy on paper. I think people still wanting to talk about what's going on. The OIG, Lisa Judge, she's doing the Sentinel event review, and that kind of gives the community an opportunity to talk about what they went through. But the timelines, I think, for what the Seattle Police Department's trying to do for their policy changes don't quite match up, but we'll see what happens there. So um, anyway, Trey Holiday, I've been talking a lot, and it sounds like that we've got a guest here who has some really big news. Oya, can you please bring in Colleen Echo Hawk?
Hey,
Hey,
you guys, good to see you. Where's my
Hey.
shirt?
we got
Those
one
are
for
some
you.
great
Believe me,
shirts.
we
I
got one for you.
Oh, good. Well, and all my love and prayers for your stepmom out there. Like it's really tough, and I know that communities of color we have some pretty significant issues to deal with breast cancer. So I'm just thinking of her and thinking of your family out there.
Thank you, thank you. I really appreciate it. But before we jump into the to your candidacy and why you're running and what you plan to do, an interesting topic that we just came off right here, the CPC last night, the
Yeah.
community groups, the CPC organized a discussion with the Seattle Police Department. What are your thoughts on some of these things that are coming together now around these policies and community trying to be involved in the policy discussion?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think that we have tremendous wisdom and knowledge right in the community that needs to be heard. It needs to be seen. So I was the same as you, Trey. I wasn't able to, I was on other meetings, wasn't able to be in that, but I really am looking forward to hearing what people were saying. And I really value and appreciate some of the colleagues on there, of the commissioners who've been working for many, many years on this issue. And I think I'm just eager to hear what people had to say and grateful that we had that opportunity for a town hall.
All right, you're a former commissioner, as some
Mhm.
of our viewers might not know. You're a former
Yeah, well,
CPC
actually,
commissioner,
I'm still a commissioner.
still a
Still a
commissioner. Okay,
commissioner, yeah.
boss. All right, Colleen Echohawk. Here's your initial chance right here. Why did you come out? Why did you come
Yeah.
out and announce that you want to run for mayor of the city of Seattle?
I've been working here in Seattle for many years. The past 7 years, I've been working specifically on Native homelessness, working to be a builder and a developer of housing for Native people, and it's in my heart. The community here are my people. And I just felt like it was time to step up. I've been working for a long time now on homelessness and housing. I've been a part of the accountability group, Community Police Commission, for around policing and criminal justice. And more recently, I've been working on equitable recovery work. And honestly, I just felt like it was time to step up. I don't think that the status quo is working for our neighbors, not working for our community. And I think I'm answering the call, stepping up and trying to do my best so that my children and other Native children, other kids of color think it's normal and exciting and should be people of color, Native women in an elected office like the mayor's office.
Okay, Trey Holiday.
Yeah, Colleen, we know each other in community,
Yeah.
and my question really comes from the Black community. We know that so many disparities are felt between Black and Native communities, and I want to know what you would do specifically around kind of these reparations that we've been, really fighting for on the ground from community for the Black community in particular.
Mhm. Oh, such a good question. And it's something I care deeply about. I think the number one answer, Trey, is I want to hear from community. I have been working for years now with, Urban League, Africa Town, Bird Place. I have friends and I think relatives there because we know each other. We've been working on these issues for a really long time. You all have the answers. I want to follow your leadership and your direction, be working with community. And yes, I think that we have a lot to do around finding ways to bring back Black community into the Central District, for instance, and ensuring that there's equity around our health systems and tremendous amounts of issues there. But the ultimate answer is I want to be listening to community, following your leadership and making things happen and do it quickly.
Ma'am, how do you feel that you would be able to work with the city council? I think that one of the
Mhm.
things that we've seen here through this and last administration, as at times the relationship's been very frosty,
Yeah,
to say the best,
yeah,
to say the least. And we find that when city government can't work together, the city as a whole suffers. So, I
yeah.
mean, do you feel that you would be able to build consensus and
Mhm.
relationship with city council?
Well, I have been working with city council. I know them. I appreciate them. I've been working on building housing for the past 4 years. I've got 220 units of housing that will open. Some of them will open this year and the rest open next year. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without their partnership, without the partnership of my sister, Councilmember Deborah Juarez, and Councilmember Mosqueda, Councilmember Gonzalez. Like, they have been working with me to make sure that this happens. So I hope to continue that relationship. I think if you know me out there in community, I am really good at being a bridge builder and trying to find consensus and commonalities for us to work from. Of course, there'll be disagreements, of course, there'll be misunderstandings, but I hope that I can be someone who will work hand in hand with community and then also with the council, and let's get things done. We have to build housing. We have to build affordable housing for our relatives, and I have a proven track record of doing that, and I can't wait because people are hurting, people are suffering. Let's make it happen right now.
Ma'am, another question real quick. I know Trey has some more, and we'll go back
Okay.
and forth here. Is that the current Mayor Durkin, has lended a lot of support as to what's going on right now in Olympia in regards to police reform.
Yeah.
Mayor Durkin has backed some of the legislation. She testified, I think it was Senate Bill 5055, collective bargaining, and some of the other things there. We have a lot of our other local representatives who are supporting the police reforms that are going on in Olympia. Are you also a supporter of what's going on right now as far as some of the legislation in Olympia that would impact policing, not only in Seattle, but the state of Washington?
Absolutely. And I think it's the right direction that we bring it to the state level. I actually testified on the same bill, 5055, that Mayor Durkin also was testifying. I absolutely believe in doing that. I think it will be very helpful for our local work if we have a statewide legislation that's passed. I so appreciate Senator Joe Wynn and his advocacy and work there, and back it up 1,000%. I think it has to happen. It's a really positive move. Actually, it's great to see. I think that we've all experienced so much trauma over the past year, so it's really nice to see some really positive movement. I absolutely support that work.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And my next question for you really stems from some of the kind of almost division that we've seen in our city. And it's really being felt nationwide. But right here in Seattle, we know that we have, a lot of folks that are able to kind of eat off of the wealth of Seattle, and then a lot that are not. How would you as mayor look to kind of bridge those gaps and create relationships between these kind of two separate groups?
Oh, I mean, we have a lot of issues in our city, but that is absolutely one I care about so much. We have to figure out a way to be able to support some of our relatives who are hurting, especially with the impact of COVID, right? Like, COVID-19 is going to, if we do not take action now, and it's a big reason I'm jumping into this race, because those are my people. I care about them. There's the rates of homelessness and the rates of and other health disparities we know impact our communities of color, and there has to be someone who understands that and will fight for that. And to answer your question, is we've got to be in collaboration with business. I saw over the summer many of our local business communities saying, I support Black Lives Matter. I want to see equity and racial and social justice. And so I'm going to be wanting to meet with them and saying, you know what, the way that you do that is by supporting Black-led efforts, by supporting Native-led efforts, and by assuring that we can actually live in this city. It is totally crazy to me that we have so many of our Black brothers and sisters who cannot live in the city, so many Native people who can't live in the city because the cost of housing has gotten so high. So I hope to inspire and encourage our business community to think of this as a way that they can participate in equitable responses, that they can be a part of the movement by helping fund some of these initiatives that have to happen.
Right. Ma'am, the city of Seattle is 700,000 people, 11,000 employees. There's 35 department heads that report to the mayor. And we talk about a lot of these political issues or social issues, which are very important. But The mayor is also the chief executive of the city.
Yeah.
What experience do you have in being able to run an organization as big as the city of Seattle?
Yeah. Well, I have a ton of managerial experience now. I've been an executive director for the past 7 years. We have, over almost $100 million in projects happening right now. And I'll tell you one thing that no matter what, I'm going to leave the Chief Seattle Club sometime this year. And when I look at what I'm leaving, I'm so proud. We have such an amazing team. Of course, we'll miss each other as a team, but that organization is going to go on and thrive and build more housing. And I think it's can be directly attributed to my leadership experience, to my desire to I'm definitely not a micromanager. As mayor, I would be offering leadership and executive decision making to our department heads, and then I would be asking them to go and do it. And also, I'd be asking them to listen to community, to be hearing from the needs of the community, to be acting in equitable ways, to be breaking down the barriers, so that our communities can thrive and can access all the resources that are at the city. So I feel like it's actually one of my more things I'm the strongest at is managerial experience and leadership. So I really hope that I have that opportunity to get to share that at the city level. I'll just finally add that I believe in a collaborative leadership. I believe in listening to community, bringing in community as much as possible. I believe in transparency and leadership, but I'm also have learned how to make those hard decisions. And there will be hard decisions to make. I know that for sure. So I'm excited to have that opportunity and continue to tell people about my experience as a leader.
Yeah, my next question for you, Ms. Echohawk, is in the Black community, we've experienced a lot of gatekeeping in the last several decades that have meant that a lot of the resources that are meant for Black community don't always hit the levels that they need to hit.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how you as mayor would look to actually work around all of that gatekeeping to ensure that Black communities are receiving the resources that are needed to be able to develop and have capacity to bring their expertise to bear.
Yeah. Oh, such a good question, because I also have experienced, I've been on both sides of it, like where people have said, well, I've seen it happen in the Native community is what I'm trying to tell you guys. I know that factor of gatekeeping. And I think that the way that I would answer this question is by continuing to be accountable to community. One thing that I hope to do as mayor is to have an elder council, someone that I'm talking to a couple times a month who are saying to me, Colleen, you know what? That wasn't right. That wasn't cool. Because, I'll make mistakes as mayor. Absolutely. I'm a human being, but I want to be held accountable. I want to have a wide open door. I want to be listening to youth. And I also want to be looking at the groups that aren't being funded by the city right now, right? Like there's one of the factors that has been so I think hurtful for our homeless community is that there are very few people of color-led organizations who are getting funding by the city to run our homeless programs. So to me, that is an outrage. I think that our Black community should be have as many dollars as we can get them to serve the Black community who is experiencing homelessness. That to me just makes sense. It's just what should happen. So I think I know that the answers lie with community, and I want to be listening. I want to be hearing what people have to say and being held accountable. And I think the gatekeeping factor is something that is very relevant, very true. Listening to youth, listening to elders, and then like regularly talking to you guys, and you guys can hold me accountable for when it's happening, and we'll shut it. We have to shut those. We have to open the gates and not hold them back.
Right.
Words all mixed up for a second.
Right. Ma'am, you talk about your work there at the Chief Seattle Club, and you're a proud native heritage and culture. I talked to Alyssa Shaw, and we actually have more interviews with this discussion later on in the show. But she brought up something real interesting when it comes to suicides in King County. And the total number, the majority of the total number is of white people committing suicide. But when you adjust for population, it's actually natives. Let me play this clip right here, and we'll talk on the other side.
If you look at the numbers from the King County Department of Health, it could be easy to interpret those numbers looking at who are the folks that are dying by suicide. It could be easy to see that or to think that suicide is a white problem. The baseline numbers are a lot of white folks are dying by suicide, but if you actually adjust for the population, the folks that are actually at highest risk are Native American folks, then followed by white folks, and then looking at Black folks.
Ms. Echohawk, when you hear those numbers right there, first of all, I mean, the reason why we're doing this show today and we have a special tonight is because suicide impacting anybody from any color or culture. I really feel, I think we all feel, man, that all God's people are precious. But when you talk about right there, what Alyssa Shaw said, that number one, natives, and also number three there, African American or Black. What are some of your thoughts on that? And what are some of the things that you've seen in your experience there at the Chief Seattle Club? And as mayor, maybe you could bring in a policy or practice to help address a lot of these things come down to mental health disparities.
Yeah. It's a sad one. I'll be honest that I have friends and relatives who have committed suicide. The rates of suicide for Native youth are incredibly high. I believe that for our white relatives out there, they are mostly elders or older folks who commit suicide. But in our community, it's the youth, and it is directly connected to loss of culture, loss of identity, loss of language, and a lot of desperation. We also know that some of our Alaska places in Alaska and Canada, way up north, they have some of the highest rates of suicide in the world. And you can directly relate that to the very recent colonization of those spaces where, language is gone, culture is gone, the way of subsistence lifestyle is gone. And so we have a lot of work to do. I know here in Seattle, we have folks who are very much struggling with mental health right now. COVID-19 has really been hard on everyone, and it's not just the homeless community that's been hard on. It's been hard on all of us, right? So I think that moving forward as a city, we have a lot of work to do to heal. And what I would love to be doing is just to be trying our best to support our Native youth, our youth of color, to give them lots of hope and inspiration. I think it has everything to do with mentorship programs, with apprenticeship programs, with just finding ways to get them involved in the community and to hear their voice. One of my first ever jobs here in Seattle was working with youth at the American Indian Heritage High School and Middle College. And I spent 2 years just getting to be a youth worker. And it was such a valuable experience. I learned so much from them, and I believe so much in supporting youth, giving them all that we can. And I would just add that an equity lens says that we give them as much attention as we possibly can because their lives are at stake. It cannot be understated. Their lives are at stake. And so that's, again, part of the reason I'm running for mayor. I think it's time for representation that is different, time for representation from someone who knows the community, who's worked in the community, who understands the disparity, and also understands the solutions, because they're right here. They're right in the community, and I can't wait to hear them.
Absolutely.
Right. Trey Holiday?
Yes. My next question goes back to some of your work at Chief Seattle Club and doing affordable development projects. Mm-hmm. Now, as an affordable developer, we know a lot of the times, particularly in Seattle, we have to make partnerships with for-profit developers or others that, really help to bring us some more money into our development projects. I want to ask you, how would you be holding for-profit developers accountable to some of the wreckage that's really taken hold in so many of our communities with regard to gentrification?
Oh, that is a brilliant question. It is hard. I know it personally. I have worked with private developers. I will say that part of the solution for us at the Chief Seattle Club is that we've decided to invest in training for our staff so that we can develop it ourselves, so that we are not beholden to private development companies. I think going forward, though, that we can absolutely hold our and our private development companies accountable to goals of equity, to goals of training some of our communities, some of our communities of color, and how to actually develop these housing programs. I'll also say, here's one example. I can remember, so most affordable housing has to be built with low-income housing tax credits, which means that there's an investor. The investor insists that there is a property management company. There are very few property management companies that are owned by people of color. That has to change. Can we invest in, building up the infrastructure around property management so that it is run by people of color? And, I'll tell you, if you look at the Office of Civil Rights, there are many complaints against the companies that are doing property management for our affordable housing groups. So we have a lot of work to do there. That's just one example, but it's also an example of how well suited I am for this time to be mayor, because I am a developer. I am focused on equitable development and breaking down these systemic racist policies that keep people of color from being able to build housing. And we should be building our own housing, owning our own housing, developing and building up the infrastructure so that our youth can be part of the development, that they should be in the unions that are building our buildings so that they can be successful, they can give back to the economy and live prosperous, well lives. So I think that this is all tied into wellness for our community, that it's better for this whole community if we have low-income housing that's being built by, our Black nonprofits or by our Native nonprofits, and we will see greater prosperity for everyone when we make that happen.
Right. I just have one last question for you, and you've mentioned it when you're in your campaign kickoff. It's there on your social media, and you said that you're running for mayor because you love Seattle. Can you tell us what is it that you love about Seattle?
Oh, Omari, I could just go on for so long about this. I'll have to hold myself down. Number one, I love our community. I feel so blessed to be a part of the Urban Native community here, the Urban Native family. I have friends all over the city who are just amazing. I have neighbors. I know all of my neighbors. They brought me over a bottle of wine last night, and the night before they brought me macaroons. There's just so many wonderful people here. The other thing I love about this space, I love that it's a city that's named after a chief. I feel very good here. Before I announced I was running for mayor, I called the leaders of the Muckleshoot and the leaders of Suquamish, and they're the tribes that have the government to government relationship. And I heard from them, and I said, hey, I'm going to do this. And they were happy for me. They encouraged me to do this. The other things I love about this city is that it's just it's just cool. We have all of this abundant water and beautiful parks and, wonderful programs. I think that we also have a chance in the city to really show what an equitable city looks like. We have progressives in the city. People move here because this is a progressive city, but we have maybe a long ways to go. I was going to say little, but a long ways to go to really live out those progressive values. So that's what I hope to do. I have, tremendous amount of respect and love for the people here, and look forward to being on this journey with you all and answering everything I can to make people know a little bit more about who I am. But I really appreciate you asking that question, because that's why I'm doing it. I love these people. I love you guys. I love my relatives at Chi Seattle Club, and I want to make this place better for all of us.
Trey Holiday, anything before we let Nisako Hawk go?
Yes. My last question for you kind of goes back to a little bit of what we've seen here. We've been covering some stories that are showcasing some of the undercut racism that still is alive and well. And you were kind of just speaking to it there with some of the ways that we can begin to truly actualize and live those progressive values. But I want to ask you, as a Native woman coming into an office like the mayor for the city of Seattle, how would you use your office to really begin to eradicate a lot lot of that undercut racism and deal with it in a way that creates some sustainable change for the city?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I would address was the race and social justice programs that are already there. I think they are not adequate to the need in our city. I think that is number one thing. I think we have a lot of work to go there. I think that, there is a huge potential in just having an open door to the mayor's office. I would want to be as accessible as I possibly could to communities of color and hearing their voices and understanding where the racist policies have impacted our communities of color, and then going out and addressing them. I already talked about housing, right? like when I first went to the city to try to talk about housing, no one took me seriously. That cannot happen. When community comes forward with an idea and has something that they want to do, they need to be heard, they need to be listened to, and then take action on that. So I think I would just come in with a totally different lens than previous mayors, and would want to be very clear about the ways that we are going to break down those racist systems that have continued to perpetuate terrible outcomes for our community. It is not okay, and we have to take action now.
All right.
Wow.
All right. Colleen Echohawk, candidate for mayor of Seattle, of our dear Emerald City. I'm sure we're going to be talking to you more and more over the next few months. I definitely want to have one of those budgets and financial talks for you and everything else. But today was an introduction for you to introduce yourself to our viewers. So do we get a promise from you? You're going to come back and talk to us?
Absolutely. Anytime. You got my number. Call me anytime. And I love being with you guys. I've said it to you before. What you're doing is so important. To have a Black-led media is so long in coming, which would have been years ago, but so glad you're doing it. Plus, you're just great personalities to be with. So thanks for being fun and great and looking cool with that blue lipstick.
You got it.
Can I wear blue lipstick in the mayor's office?
Absolutely. Rock it proudly.
As long as it's Converge blue.
All right, it will be. Take care, you guys. Appreciate you very much.
Yeah, so there you go. Colleen Echohawk, that's now the third candidate running for, that's been here on Converge, running for the mayor of Seattle. And man, this is one thing for sure. She comes with a lot of energy.
Always. Every space I've ever experienced, Colleen, the energy is high, so Miss Echohawk is keeping it high. And I think that's going to be needed in the mayor's office. I mean, we need a resurgence of energy and understanding and a real commitment to these values. Some of the comments right here in my feed are saying, look, we need true honesty and integrity in that office. And we need to make sure that people are really bringing those values and then adhering to them while they're there. That's very important.
All right, we're going to take a quick break right now, and an even quicker check-in with Nikki Barron. And in the second half of the show, we're going over the interview that we did with Alyssa Shaw from the King County Prosecutor's Office. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us. Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
ConvergeMedia produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support ConvergeMedia today via Venmo, CashApp, or PayPal at ConvergeMedia.
All right. Now we're back. Glad they didn't catch anybody doing nothing they weren't supposed to be doing.
No, never. Professionals over here, we know better.
All right, producer Nikki Barron, tell us what's going on with the COVID numbers.
Yeah, good morning. So I've got your numbers for you here. Another 1,352 coronavirus cases and 19 deaths have been reported in Washington, bringing the total number of diagnoses to 303,482, including 4,167 deaths, which is, like I said, up 19 since we last reported. 17,354 people have been hospitalized in Washington state due to the coronavirus. Statewide, we're at an 81% hospital ICU inventory and a 10% positivity rate. And we just broke another record here. Worldwide, we just hit 100 million cases worldwide and 2.16 million deaths, with 25.5 million in the United States and 425,000 here in the United States. So yeah, we've surpassed the number of lives lost in World War II and quickly approaching the war with the most casualties on American soil, which is the Civil War, which was at 620,000. So yeah, it's getting grander in scale, but those are your numbers.
Right. It was a lot of news that came out today. A long press conference earlier. We're on air again at 6:15 tonight. It'll be 9:15 out here. I'm gonna stay up late with you, kiddo. Real quick, what are you covering at 6:15?
Yeah, so tonight I'm going to be talking about Biden's first seven official days in office and talking about he actually has 7 different points that he hits of things that he's doing to help combat the coronavirus pandemic in the United States. So I'm going to be running you guys through those.
All right, good stuff. Appreciate you, Nikki. We're going to take a short break right now. And when we come back, we're going to jump into our interview with Alyssa Shaw. You're watching the Morning Update Show. All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. My name is Omari Salisbury. I'm joined by the wonderful, ever talented, and amazing Trey Holiday.
Hey, y'all. Hey. Got to get into some important information. Oh, happy that you were able to sit down with Miss Alyssa.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, a big shout out actually over there to Casey, who's a public information officer in the prosecutor's office. We have been talking about domestic violence. Excuse me. And in the conversation, he appointed me over to Alyssa and her team over at, it's a long name. I'm not even going to try to play it, but they're in the prosecutor's office, but it's on extreme risk protection orders and also around domestic violence. And I had no idea, like, what is an extreme risk protection order? And I really didn't understand why Casey had sent me over there. But it turns out that the prosecutor, there's this extreme risk protection order, in which she'll explain it a bit here. But basically, when people, if you have a loved one, relative who you feel might be suicidal or having suicidal thoughts, you can actually go to court and get the gun taken away. And so this is something that's there and available right now. And a lot of people, when you first think about that, a lot of people sort of say, man, you're not going to take my guns away and things like that. And at first, that's what I thought the conversation was about. But it's really about, taking deadly harm, a gun away from somebody who very well might kill themselves. Here's the first clip right here where Alyssa's introducing herself and what her unit does.
So I am the Extreme Risk Protection Order Advocate with the King County Prosecutor's Office Firearm Enforcement Unit. And so we do a couple of different things. We work obviously on domestic violence cases, but I work specifically on a different type of order called an extreme risk protection order. But our unit is a multidisciplinary team. I'm a social worker. So we have a combination of social workers, advocates, and prosecutors all working together to make sure that folks that are a risk to themselves or others do not have access to firearms.
Right. And this was a program I didn't really know about. I mean, a lot of people don't know. I don't own a firearm, but she tends to break it down a little bit more, because when we think about people who are committing suicide, it turns out that it's a very high number in King County of people who are committing suicide who do so by firearm.
When we're talking about firearm injury prevention, we're really wanting to talk about suicide, because suicides actually account for 68% of all of the firearm deaths in King County. So if you're looking at gun violence, suicide has to be a part of the conversation.
Right. And imagine that, though. I mean, she was saying is that suicides account for 68% of all deaths by firearm in King County. And so when you think about it like that, that's a really big number. It's a big number of people who are actually committing suicide. They're doing so by firearm there.
Yeah, I mean, that is stark reality that we're living in. Oh, and I'm glad that we're putting these numbers to the forefront, because a lot of times, if it's not something that you're directly affected by, like a family member committing suicide, you're not understanding the harsh reality of these numbers. And so I'm glad Alyssa was able to spotlight that, because yes, that is really huge. I think even for me, I was thinking, well, we have a lot of stuff that hits our community differently when you think about drive-by shootings or youth gun violence, and we talk a lot about that. But to hear that stark number of 68%, that is definitely startling.
Right. And Alyssa continues with the numbers. We played this clip earlier when Colleen was here, but it's crazy because when you do an adjustment, a lot of times, especially in our community, we think of suicide as a white thing. You know what I'm saying? And I think, and I know for sure in your special tonight at 7:00, when you talk to Ashley McGirt, we talk about, like, a lot of times in our community, if someone does commit suicide, we kind of don't really talk about like how they died and things like that. But this is by the numbers. Playing this one again.
If you look at the numbers from the King County Department of Health, it could be easy to interpret those numbers looking at who are the folks that are dying by suicide. It could be easy to see that or to think that suicide is a white problem. The baseline numbers are a lot of white folks are dying by suicide, but if you actually adjust for the population, the folks that are actually at highest risk are Native American folks, then followed by white folks, and then looking at Black folks.
So, I mean, you see in Black people, natives make up such a very small population in this county, and then Black people make up a very small population. But when adjusted by population, sure, the total, of course, the majority of suicides committed are by white people. But imagine that adjusted, it's Native American, then white, and then Black.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, why it's so important. I think some of what Colleen Echohawk was talking about earlier is really ensuring that communities are resourced, because so many deaths, and we talk about this, me and Ashley McGirt, so many suicidal deaths are really, the leading cause is depression. And we know that there are so many different things that factor into depression, but people not being able to live their best lives, people not having the resources they need, that is a leading cause of depression. And so I think it's important to make sure that correlation is drawn.
Right. And also something else that Alyssa pointed out is there's an uptick in suicides in the Black community.
Anecdotally, we are actually starting to see, and there have been some academic studies coming out showing increases of suicide within the Black community. Nationally, there is a lot of attention right now on Chicago. They've seen an absolute huge increase in their suicide rates in the Black communities in Chicago. And then another factor that we probably won't know the impact of for quite some time is the pandemic.
Right. And real deal, my son's in school out there in Chicago, at the University of Loyola out there. And I mean, it's a reality. Our young people are taking their lives a lot of times, with firearms and other means. And I mean, I'm glad that this is something that you and Ashley talk about tonight at 7 o'clock, because I think there's something that we need to be discussing in our community, in our neighborhood.
Absolutely, it is. And I think too that when we talk about, access to firearms is one, but also Alyssa's completely right in terms of understanding how the pandemic really plays into these numbers, because a lot of people out there are just living with this kind of despair. The pandemic has brought that on, and also the isolation, which I know Ashley and I talk about too, but that isolation is huge as well, because it allows you to carry out suicide when you don't have, people checking in on you. And that's why it really is important to make sure that you're calling your loved ones up, even during COVID, that you're staying connected as much as you can.
Right. And so, getting back to exactly what it is that the Extreme Risk Protection Order unit does, here's Alyssa explaining it a little bit.
What we're here to do is, a couple of different things. On the day-to-day basis, what we can help with is the actual process for applying for an extreme risk protection order, which can remove the firearms of someone who is struggling, going through a crisis, and might be making threats or comments about suicide.
Right. And so, their whole unit is there, and there's another clip that I'll play to be able to work with people who have a family member who they really feel is suicidal. And it's another clip that kind of explains this as well, is that and I'll let her speak for herself, but that it's a lot of different myths out there. And one of the things is that, well, if you take away a gun, they're going to go do this and that, or if you take the gun away, they're going to slit their wrist, or anyways, let's jump into some of the myths.
I really do think that any conversation about gun violence really should include a conversation about suicide, and any conversation about suicide should include information about firearms. So what we want to try to do when we're talking to people is there's just so many myths about suicide. And the biggest one that we're trying to expose is that if you take a firearm away from someone who is suicidal, the natural worry is that, oh, well, maybe we'll take their gun away, but they could try to take their life by some other means. And the data actually doesn't reflect that. If you take a firearm away from someone who is suicidal, the likelihood that they survive a suicide attempt by using another means increases so much. So basically the message is we want to get the absolute most lethal means that a person has to try to take their life. We want to remove that from the equation. Taking a gun away is not going to stop them from those feelings, whatever led them to feeling that they needed to end their life. But removing that firearm is potentially going to be the thing that keeps them alive long enough to get the help that they need. So that's what we really want to do, because again, the research shows that most people who attempt suicide do not go on to die by suicide unless there's a firearm involved. So any other means that you're talking about, if someone it goes to overdose, there's a much higher chance that they can survive that than if they try to take their life with a firearm.
Right. And what she went on to say here, Trey, and I'll jump right into this clip, is that a lot of what the ERPO, the Extreme Risk Protection Order, it doesn't solve the underlying issues, but it does buy time. It does, taking the gun away and someone just being able to make a quick decision. A lot of research shows that although some people do plan out their suicide on this day at this time, things like that, a lot of suicides or attempted suicides are a quick decision, a split decision. Most
people, and again, the research shows from folks that do survive suicide attempts, they ask them, how long did you think about it? And for most people, the answer is not too long, maybe a few minutes, maybe a few hours. It's unlikely, from what I have seen in the research, that again, that's another myth, that people are planning out these, picking a specific date, perhaps, and of course these things happen. Some people are in that state and suicidal for quite some time, but the majority of people, it's a quick decision. They're really struggling, they're really hurting, and they don't see a way out. And I think that recognizing that, again, getting the most lethal means out of the equation completely, it just reduces the quick thought that they might have. If there's a firearm in their home, they have to think a little longer. And it takes, what we want to do is we just want to give people time. We want to give them time to have a loved one notice that they're down. Give them time to realize, you know what, I actually, I want to go on. I do love my family. I want to stick around. Maybe I need to get some help. But we're really just trying to buy people time. And removing a firearm is one of the best ways to give people that time.
Right. And what Alyssa went on to say, and I see this over here in the comments, it's like, okay, we're taking the gun away, but then what? Are there resources or referrals or things like that? And one of the things that unit does is try to get referrals over to people, because the gun has been removed, but the feelings that someone had they remain.
Even after an extreme risk protection order is put into place, like I said, that court order doesn't necessarily address what led that person to feeling suicidal. So we really try to work with family members and make sure that they have referrals to local resources if they want to get their loved one into therapy, counseling, some sort of chemical dependency treatment, and then making sure that they also get the help that they need, as someone who is supporting someone who is struggling with suicide, mental illness, addiction, maybe all three. It's important to make sure that the family members are taking care of themselves while they are giving that love and support to the person that they care for.
So many factors in this. I think that with Ashley McGirt in your conversation with her tonight, it's one of the things that Alyssa talked to right there. It was like, they'll restrain the gun, but it doesn't stop right there. People, these issues need to get addressed. She talked with people dealing with suicide, thoughts of suicide, depression, chemical addiction or dependency.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that Ashley also highlights a lot of that. One of the things that Alyssa said that is really striking is, again, one of the key signs is someone verbalizing that they want to commit suicide. And Ashley touches on that in our special tonight as well. And I think it is important that when we talk about listening to our family members and our loved ones, being attentive to our youth needs, a lot of that stuff is really what can bridge the gap or make the difference in that person's life, that they do know and realize right away that someone is there that cares and that will listen to them and that will guide them through this, and that they're not alone. I think that's very, very key here. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. My last clip here is Alyssa giving some contact information if people are interested in contacting about the extreme risk protection order. Let me just go ahead and play that.
The best way to get in touch with our office is through an email address. And so our email address is ERPO@kingcounty.gov. So that is the shortened version of Extreme Risk Protection Order. That email address goes to our whole team. So it goes to me, it goes to our Extreme Risk Protection Order prosecutor. So it's not a 24-hour service. So if you are actively in crisis, please contact a crisis service. and then maybe email us and we'll be able to get back to you. But I just want to make sure folks know that we are not watching that email address 24/7.
Right. So if someone's in crisis, they definitely should, call a crisis line. But for the protection order, they can email right there, ERPO@kingcounty.gov. And I want to thank Alyssa, and I want to thank the prosecutor's office and Casey over there, who it's public information. It's crazy. We just start emailing because they'll send out stuff and we'll pick up on it. And we started talking about different things that come out of that office. Unfortunately, it's usually all bad. It's murders and this and that. And we started talking about domestic violence and how people could file the DVPOs online and everything else. And that conversation with Casey then led to Alyssa, and also to be able to give our audience some more information on something that they might not have known, that there is help out there. You can get that gun legally restrained for a relative that's going through a crisis and that might be suicidal. And man, this is a tough one, and I know that that we got the special tonight at 7:00 as well. And it hit me because the conversation that I was having when Casey referred me over there to Alyssa, I thought it was just something about gun, here, lock your gun or something like that. And when she told me that the part of the program was really about suicide prevention, it had triggered something in me, and I think it's something that you and Ashley talk about, is that when you got a loved one, someone that you really care about, they commit suicide, it's a guilt that stays with you because you're like, man, what could I have done? I didn't know. I didn't see any signs or whatever. And the conversation I had with these guys, with Alyssa and them, was like, it was so powerful in the sense that I had just tucked that away for months. I said, I know we got to do something about this, but I just wasn't ready for it. Even emotionally, I wasn't ready to have the conversation. And, I'm real thankful that we're having this conversation, and you as well, somebody who's been impacted by suicide.
Absolutely. Oh, and one of the things that I really appreciate about what Alyssa really highlighted there is, when particularly in the Black community, and, even in the white community, if you're really a gun enthusiast, you're like, look, you ain't taking my guns. Like, I got these guns for protection. But I love how Alyssa highlighted that immediately when you take away something so lethal as a gun, that the suicides decrease, that the attempts of suicide decrease, and that it also increases the time that we have to allow that person to get the help that they need. That is very key here, because I think that you're absolutely right when we talk about suicides in the Black community, and the fact that when we shuffle the numbers here and based on population, Black people are number 3 when it comes to suicides right here. It's important that we really do understand all of the measures that we can do to prevent this, because once your family member decides to take their life and you're left over, you're absolutely right. The survivor's guilt is real. And you also begin to get really upset with the people that were even closer to those family members and say, well, wait a minute, why didn't you see this? Or why didn't you do this? Or you didn't call us and you didn't inform us. You didn't alarm us. And I think that there's so many different questions and feelings and emotions that are brought to bear for so many family members. So I just really am appreciative that today and throughout this week, we've been dedicating a lot of our energy to uplifting suicides and uplifting the prevention of suicides and the reasons and causes. Because I think as we begin to be more informed, we can make smarter choices around this.
Right. And that's 7:00 tonight, Trey. You and Ashley McGurk, Washington Therapy Fund, Ashley McGurk, therapist, and a conversation really centering around suicide and mental health in the Black community. Is there anything that you want people to know, like a preview of what else you're talking about tonight at 7?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been hitting a lot of this on the head this whole week, but I will say that I want to just encourage folks. If anybody out there has had suicidal thoughts, as we've just talked about the pandemic, bringing on more isolation and bringing on folks like feeling levels of depression, I encourage you to tune in tonight. Hear from Ashley McGurk about some resources. There are lots of them out there. And I just want to give you a sense of encouragement to know that your loved ones do care. And if you start letting folks know where your thoughts are taking you, you will start to see that people will step up in your life to help prevent that and help guide you into some resources that are going to help change, your perspective and really allow you to see the beauty of your life. And so I encourage you, all of you in our audience, if you guys know of anyone in your family, your neighbors, people that are close to you, that you wonder, hey, I know you've been down a bit. I encourage you to share this this broadcast tonight at 7 p.m. with them as well, because the more that we're informed, the better it is in terms of the ways that we make decisions around suicide and the ways that we bring our life force to help out those in need.
Right. And I think that the one thing too as well is that sometimes and a lot of times it's the people, it's a lot, but it's a lot of times it's the people who don't seem suicidal, they don't seem depressed, they don't see these signs or these signs that are visible and things like that. Man, I'm just glad we're having this discussion. And man, I used to read this. Mama used to tell me when I was little. This book. It said, "God don't make no junk." You know what I'm saying? All God's people is valuable. And it's a lot of people right now going through a lot, and we just need to try to center our humanity. Man, we need to center our humanity. We need to just try to be better to each other, understand each other, listen to each other. Anyways, didn't mean to get to crying on air, but this has just been a real topic for both of us. And even trying to put this together. And so I really encourage people, 7:00 tonight, tune in, Trayana and Ashley McGurk. And let me find the merch break. We got it. My mom always says we can't leave the show, we can't leave people affected. So we're gonna be right back. All right, Trey. So we're gonna leave the show in a good way here, man. I got a little bit of black girl magic for you. Roz Brewer, big boss. She's leaving Starbucks, gonna be CEO over at Walgreens.
Check out the big move in Walgreens in the after hours. The stock up more than 8% as the company secures some serious star power. Let's get to our Kate Rogers with the details. Kate.
Melissa, that's right. Very, very true on Star Power. Starbucks is announcing this afternoon its current chief operating officer, Roz Brewer, is going to be leaving the company at the end of February. CNBC's now matched the Wall Street Journal report that Brewer will be named CEO of Walgreens as early as this week, citing sources. Now, once that announcement's made, she's going to join a very short list of female CEOs at Fortune 500 companies and will also notably be the only black female CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Challenger Gray and Christmas also reports that more women came into the CEO position in 2020 than in any other year. Now, Brewer had been with Starbucks since 2017, was also previously CEO of Sam's Club, so she does have experience in both the retail and restaurants world. At Starbucks, she was working closely on the company's transformation and new store formats, including those important drive-thrus, pick-up and mobile order and pay, also streamlining the customer experience, working on things like eliminating certain tasks for baristas to after hours so they could focus on consumer engagement in stores and boost those scores stores there. Starbucks also teamed up with Washington State on its healthcare vaccination rollout, as did Amazon, where Roz Brewer is also a board member. It's interesting to see the healthcare ties through all of these companies as this news comes out. Now, both stocks moving on the news. Starbucks was lower. All that, of course, could be tied to its earnings report. And also Walgreens got a nice pop on the news, up over 7% in the after-hours trade, Melissa.
All right. A whole lot of black girl magic right there. Roz Brewer making moves.
Yes, thank you for that, because you're absolutely right. I think you and I have been uplifting suicide this week, and both of us being personally affected by it. We did good, that we didn't cry every single time, because you're absolutely right. So thank you, Roz, for bringing in some black girl magic to end the show the way that we always do. We got to do it right.
That's right. That's right. All right, guys. So tonight, man, it's a good night. So 6:15. The coronavirus update show with producer Nikki Barron, and then at 7:00 we're rolling into our primetime special with Trey Holiday and with Ashley McGirt. And so, any last words before we get out of here, Trey?
You know what? Make it a great one. And as we said, please tune in tonight. I'm so thankful to Ashley for bringing her brilliance onto the set and onto the show so that we can share her knowledge with all of you. And thank you, we've been doing some really great work together, and I'm just happy that we're continuing in this Converge family. Make it a great Wednesday, y'all.
Thank you, Trey Holiday. All right, until tomorrow, 11 a.m. You guys know the drill.
Yeah. Peace.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day.